Hello, everybody. This is Nikki from Motherhood Unfiltered. It's going to be okay. And today we have guest Danny Brassell on the line. He's a literary um, extraordinaire. So, but before I bring him on, I just want to remind everybody if you're watching on YouTube, please comment, like, and subscribe. If you've already done that, please share it with someone that you love. And if you're listening on the podcast, please go to Spotify or Apple iTunes and rate and review it. That way I know how I'm doing. And it's kind of like a report card. I need to know how I'm doing. I got to hear back from y'all. So, but without further ado, here is Danny Brassell.
Hey, Nikki.
Hi.
Thanks so much
So
for
I,
having me. Thanks for all you do. I think your credo is something everybody needs. Is it's going to be okay.
well, I usually follow that up with if it's, if I'm not crying, I might as well laugh because if I don't laugh, I'm going to cry and I'm tired of crying. So,
All of life is a choice. I completely agree.
exactly. So, I didn't go into telling everybody your background and everything because I wanted you to tell us um, because you've done a lot of things. I mean, I didn't even know where to begin and how to wrap it all up into like three little sentences. So,
Well, that's good. I hope my life doesn't boil down to three sentences. That's great. So
exactly.
yeah, I guess I'll be as brief as possible. I'm Danny Brassell, and my mission is to bring the joy back into education in the workplace. I do that in several ways. As a speaker, I train parents and teachers how to get struggling and reluctant readers into and become more passionate and proficient readers. Because I think schools do an adequate job of teaching kids how to read. The question I always ask people is, what good is it teaching a kid how to read if they never want to read? I teach kids why to read
Exactly.
because I've never had to tell a kid, go watch TV. I've never had to tell a
Mhm,
kid, go play a video game. And I never want to have to tell a kid,
mhm.
go open a book. I want them to choose to read because they love it. And then the other thing that I do, which is really taking up a lot of my time lately, is I train entrepreneurs and business people how to use speaking to grow their businesses. And then finally, the third thing I do is I've been working with a wonderful company out of Ireland called Cyber Smarties, which is a social media platform for kids that teaches
Oh.
kids how to use social media in a positive way, which is something I think all adults should have to go through as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I 'cause I've abused it in the past,
Yeah.
but so teaching people public speaking, I mean, everybody had to take that class in high school, and
Hmm.
I loathed it, I hated it so bad, and it was just because I was so extremely shy, but, as you can tell, I've kinda gotten over that, but that was something it still makes me nervous,
Hmm.
um, but but yeah, I one of the things I love is I love to read, and I thought, "How can I get my kids interested in reading?" And they did not I mean, they struggled with it, they did not wanna pick up a book, and I thought, "I can't deal with this, these kids have gotta read."
Hmm.
So, when my oldest was learning to read, I gave him something I thought he might be interested in, and it was a Star Wars book,
Hmm.
and he struggled through it, and he reads all the time now.
Wow.
I'm Yeah, and he would prefer to read than he plays video games, but
Hmm.
yeah, so my oldest and my middle one are reader, but my youngest one, he's just not into it. I mean, he's in his 20s though,
Hmm.
so I mean, starting off, I mean, how do you get a kid interested in, like, reading to where they
Yeah.
don't even have to you don't even have to tell them?
Well, it's ironic, Nikki, that I'm considered America's leading reading ambassador nowadays because I grew up hating reading. My father was a librarian, and I always hated the public library. It always smelled funny to me. The furniture was uncomfortable. There was always some elderly woman telling me to be quiet. There's always some creepy homeless guy hanging out by the bookshelves, thought he was a
Oh
vampire.
my God, stop that. That's so true. They would come in and read all the magazines. And I'm
Absolutely.
like, I want to read that magazine. And he'd have
Yeah.
them for hours.
That's so much urine. It wasn't until I started teaching in the inner city, Nikki, where all of a sudden I saw a lot of my students didn't have the advantages I had growing up. I mean, I
Yeah.
was very blessed. Both of my parents were in the home. We weren't
Right.
very wealthy, but we always had food on the table. And my
Yeah.
parents always read in front of us kids. They read to us kids, and we always had plenty of access to reading materials. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I saw the kids didn't like reading, and I realized, wow, you got a lot of strikes against you, and reading is really kind of your passport to the rest of the world. It started to
Right.
become a big deal to me. And I think that the way they teach it in schools, your youngest is a son, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
had all boys.
This is one of the things I always tell people, just so you know, 4 out of 5 of struggling and reluctant readers are boys. Boys and girls are very different. Little girls will read books
Yeah.
about little boys. Little boys don't have interest in reading books about little girls. I mean, there's some exceptions,
Right.
but
Yeah.
there's a great. I love the Diary of the Wimpy Kid series by Jeff Kinney, and I can't remember which one of the books it is, but the mother of Greg Heffley decides she's going to start a mother-son book club in the neighborhood, and so she invites all the neighborhood boys to come to their house. And the mother, she selected books, and she asked all the boys to bring books. And the mother, the books that she has selected are Anne of Green Gables, Little House on the Prairie, Aeroplane and Tall, Little Women. And the
Yeah.
boys, the books that they've selected are like the Book of Hot Rods, Dinosaur Book, How to Cheat at Video Games, the Book of Bodily Functions. I'm like, well, there you go. That's in a nutshell. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, I was forced to read The Scarlet Letter. And I don't want to offend anybody that likes The Scarlet Letter. Basically, the book is about Hester Prynne commits adultery, and so she's forced to wear an A on her chest. And I raised my hand.
I did not like that book.
Yeah. I raised my hand. I raised my hand, Nikki, and I asked my teacher, I'm like, can I wear a B on my chest? Because I am so bored reading this book. And here's what I want all of your listeners to hear. The research is very clear on this. It doesn't matter what you read. What matters is how much you read. It doesn't matter if you're reading James Joyce or James and the Giant Peach. People who read more read better. I'll give you a little tip. The little boy who only reads Captain Underpants is going to be a better reader than the little boy who refuses to read anything.
Mm-hmm.
Captain Underpants is the gateway drug to Shakespeare, but we got to get the kid first. And you did a great example about your son who you got him reading the Star Wars books. That's very
Yeah.
My mom's no longer with us, but before she had passed away, I was amazed because she revealed to me one day that she didn't like football. And I'm like, how could you not like football? Jim and I talk to you about football all the time. And she said, well, if you have 2 teenage sons, you want to talk to them, you learn about football. And I was like, wow, that's what for all the moms out there, isn't that great? I thought that was the greatest. It's the truth. I got 3 kids of my own, and I read different books with the different kids. So my oldest, 19, so we're reading. She's into Game of Thrones, so we're reading. What's the name of the book? It's Land of
Fire and Ice, or
yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
For younger kids, by the way, and I don't even know if it's appropriate for me to be reading, but my son, he's always into war stuff, and so the book I'm reading right now is a biography on this British general from World War I and World War II, General Adrian Carton de Wiort. The guy got wounded 15 times. He's missing an eye, missing a hand. He's fascinating. He was taking an award. And then my youngest daughter, for some reason, she's into literature, and so we just finished The Great Gatsby, which I hate that book, but I read it. I guess I shouldn't say that, Nikki. After reading it aloud, I'm like, oh, F. Scott Fitzgerald, he's really a brilliant writer. He knows how to craft.
Yeah.
Now we're reading Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, and if you ever read that book, Nikki, you realize how stupid we are in the 21st century. I'm like, pop culture reading back in the 18th century, and I have to take a dictionary out almost every sentence. It's brilliant.
Exactly. Yeah, I know.
And then my wife. So this is another thing I tell people is, because kids aren't stupid. They need to see us reading, and so I read my wife in front of the kids all the time too. So my wife She was into the Outlander series by Diana Gabaldon, so we read
Oh
those
my God,
together.
those are my favorite.
Oh, they're good. I'll tell you, this series that we
My
read,
husband loves them too.
they're good. We actually went to
Yeah.
Scotland to tour Scotland, where it takes place. There's some. You can tell. I'll tell you, there's some really cool Diana Gabaldon stories about. We went to was it Culloden is where the big battle,
Colada. Yeah.
and one of her characters. This was a fictitious character. He dies at that battle,
Yeah,
and
but
we
the
went to the
clan is buried there.
yeah, and her husband is like, "Is this where the battle took place?" And he starts crying because this fictional character died. I mean, that's how powerful that was. And then there's a series, and I'm trying to promote it like crazy because I just think they're the most wonderful books for anybody. It's
Yeah.
called the Unselected, I think, the Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon. It's by Beth Brower. There's 6 of them now in the series. Each of them is very short, like anywhere from 120 to 200 pages.
Oh,
Oh my
okay.
God, they're so delightful. I mean, I never thought I'd be into. It's like Elizabethan England, and the main character is a woman, but she has
Yeah.
3 friends. One is an American photographer. One is a preacher, and the other one's like a lord. And they just make the greatest. It's just the neatest. I have no idea why some actress hasn't bought the rights to this to make them into movies. They're really nice stories.
Yeah. They're like all different backgrounds and everything. How in the heck they gonna have a conversation, you
Yeah,
know?
well, it's nice. Yeah, like, I guess I'm getting old. I'm getting old, Nikki, because like when I was a
Me
kid,
too.
parents were concerned if I watched the A-Team. They actually made sure we watched the A-Team together. And then when they realized nobody died on the show, they're like, okay, you can watch it. And like now you turn on anything and everybody's throwing out F-bombs and there's rape. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like you can be able to watch any movie, like a John Wayne movie. I think there was a John Wayne movie where he was criticized because he said the word damn. And I'm like, man, like I wish that's all there was exposure to now. I mean, now like people are,
I
I
love
don't know.
John Wayne movies.
Well, it's one of
I'm
the things
telling
that,
you.
yeah, I'm reading like, because I have one of my book, I have one of the top book clubs online called lazyreaders.com, where every month I provide 10 book recommendations, 3 or 4 adult
Uh-huh.
level, 3 or 4 young adult level, and 3 or 4 children's level books, all under 250 pages. So
Yeah.
something you can read when you're bored at a meeting.
Right.
I admit though, Nikki, when I'm looking at young adult titles, it is so difficult for me to find 3 to 4 positive books for kids. I mean, almost all of these teenage books are about dystopian society, date rape,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no
Yeah.
wonder teenagers are screwed up. Show them something positive. I mean, I was watching this horrible show on TV the other night called it's called The News, and it totally depressed me. And I'm like, one of my mentors,
I know.
yeah, Charlie Tremendous Jones, he said, "You're the same today as you will be in 5 years, except for 2 things: the books you read and the people you meet. So make sure you surround yourself with people that lift you up and fill your mind with books that are positive." So there you
Yeah.
go. Short question, very long answer. I apologize.
No, that's totally okay because I I've been well, my husband and I have been really super choosy about what we've been watching lately because it's just so full of propaganda, and I don't wanna be around it. I know what I believe in, and I I mean, I don't mind, seeing a little bit of it, but when it's in every show and they redo old movies and
Yeah,
they pull in current events and things, and I'm like, "This is insanity."
it's crazy. I don't know. I'm just old that way. Although I will say this, I was shocked, and I still don't understand why he didn't win Best Director. I thought it was sacrilege for Steven Spielberg to remake West Side Story because that was one of my favorite movies. And when I saw his remake, I'm like, holy cow! I think he actually did a better job. Like, he didn't. I think people completely underestimate. They just overlook how
Yeah.
brilliant he is. I just.
He's done some good work. He has.
He's
Yeah.
amazing. He doesn't do anything. I mean, he's done some bad things, but I mean, it's just when I saw West Side Story, because I went there with an attitude like, "Oh, how dare you?"
I'm gonna hate this
Oh, I
movie.
was, and I was like trying to hate it, and I'm like, "Oh, actually, I kind of like Tony and Maria better. They're better cast." And wow, look at the camera angles for this dance. I just thought it was amazing.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, so I
Yeah,
may give it a consideration, but Yeah, I've been super picky about what I watch,
Yeah.
and I just don't like leave things on. And now when I think about um what some of the things my kids have watched, I'm like so embarrassed, you know. But I mean, they're good kids. And the thing about it is their dad's an avid reader, I'm an avid reader. And so there were some things they got to watch, and then they went back and read the book, or vice versa. And and we have some in-depth conversations about it. And it's just, I mean, as they're older, it's been really great seeing that.
I love that. That's a
So,
great that you just provided everybody. I tell people say, oh, don't let the kids watch the movies. I always tell the kids to watch the movies and then read the book. And people say, why would you do that? I'm like, because almost every time without fail, the kid comes back and says, hey, the movie was really good. The book's a lot better
yeah,
because when you're reading,
yeah.
you picture things in your mind, and there's no way any director can
Mhm.
fulfill what's in your mind.
Yeah, that's true. I can think of a conversation I had with the my middle son. He had read all the Hungry Games
Oh,
or
yeah, yeah.
he read them first,
Mm-hmm.
and then he saw the first movie, and he did not even care for it because he said that, because you could hear what the main character was saying and thinking in her head, and they didn't do that in the movie, and so he said that was really a good part of the story.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's give and takes with all of that. I like when people try to be creative and take a book and make something spectacular out of it, but sometimes their vision is no one else's vision, so we don't get it. So
And then sometimes it works brilliantly. I mean,
yeah.
I read the Ron Chernow biography on Alexander Hamilton, and I really loved it. And when I saw the play Hamilton by Lin Manuel Miranda, I'm like, holy cow! It only took about 3 minutes of watching this play where I forgot all the founding fathers were white. I mean, like, I feel like that's amazing. It's fascinating. And I was like, wow, that really. I think he deserves every award he ever got, just because I'm like, wow, I never thought about that. Where you just start picturing things, and what a service he did for like minority actors that never used to get employed. Now they're remaking everything.
Yeah.
Wow, you like Star Wars? Now they made Asian Star Wars, and it's always something like that.
I don't mind that at all,
I don't
but
know.
I was trying to figure out, there was another one they did, and the I think it was the Tudors or something, they had a black actress playing it. I was like, "No, wait a minute here. I don't think that's
Yeah,
true to history." And they're like, "They're just being creative." I was like, "Oh, okay." So I thought they were trying to portray it as a true
yeah,
story,
yeah, yeah.
and I was like, "Wait a minute here. You got me all mixed up over this." But yeah, I mean,
Isn't
when
that
you
what's good
forget
about
that
TV
the
shows? Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that's what's good about TV shows and movies, though, is it gets you now thinking. Now you have to read to find out what the true story was. You're like, oh, okay. Oh, Queen Elizabeth
yeah.
was African American. Okay, good. I didn't know that.
Exactly. I mean, I like it that, with the Alexander, Hamilton one, that you forgot that the
Amazing.
founding fathers were white,
Uh-huh.
and it just pulled you right into the whole,
Yeah,
creativity of it, so
absolutely.
so what is some of the biggest challenges that, the, we're facing in education today? I mean, and what do you think we could do to address that?
Well, again, I'll sound like an old guy, but people gripe all the time. This is not new. This is been three. The Greeks thought that writing was the death of education. Like, what? You can't memorize everything. You got to write it down. And now
Oh
people
my
are freaking
gosh.
out because of artificial intelligence. Chat GPT can write a paper for a kid. And
Yeah.
I'm just a person that I really believe, Nikki, in embracing technology. I mean, you can't put your head in
Mhm.
the sand. It's here. Now we just have to
Yeah.
figure. I mean, the world's changing. I mean,
Mhm.
just in my lifetime, I look at my kids as spoiled brats. I'm like, when I was a kid, I used to wait for the second Saturday of April because that's when CBS would play Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and I had to hold it if I had to go to the bathroom because you couldn't pause the TV. You had to wait until there was a commercial break. I mean, now kids can just like download anything immediately. I mean, things like microwave ovens. I remember when we got a microwave oven. That was a big deal.
Us too.
Yeah, it's standard. I mean,
It had a big dial on it. It had a big dial, and you
That's
like a clock.
crazy. Oh, this is amazing.
It was.
So I was training some teachers last week, and they asked me about ChatGPT. And for those that don't know, they're listening. ChatGPT. There's I think the website's OpenAI.
I love it. I love it.
You can literally type in anything. Like you can type in, give me some questions, give me some reading questions for Danny for today's show, and it'll come up with like 10 questions. It's amazing, just immediately. You can do like
it did.
Yeah,
trust me, it did because I asked it.
Write a poem about The Rock. I mean, it's amazing.
It is.
And so the teachers were concerned about that, but I'm like, well, first of all, there's tons of grammatical errors I see all the time. Second of all, if you research real people, you'll find that a lot of the facts it gives are not accurate, like because it's just taking all the information off of the web. And I know a lot of people think that if it's on the web, it must be true, but that's not necessarily the case. And so I look at it as just this great new tool, and let's figure out how to use it to our advantage. I mean, I think education is in a great place if you look at it from the proper perspective. I think that too many schools are trying to train all kids the same way. And I mean, I was interviewed the other day, and a person asked me, well, Danny, what do you think? Public school, private school, or charter school? And I said, yes. And the reason being, every kid's different. I mean, you had 3 kids, they're different. Some kids, homeschooling might be the answer. Some kids, I mean, one of the things I'm a big advocate for is vocational training. In this country, for some reason, we no longer look at career and technical education. And I mean, that's where the jobs are. And those people make a lot of money. A lot of people think the point of our education system is to produce college graduates. Well, first of all, I always tell people, nowhere in the Constitution does it guarantee anybody a right to an education in this country. It's an incredible thing that we do. But second of all, the point of our education system is to produce tax-paying citizens. And if you want to learn a trade, like become a mechanic or a plumber, I guarantee you make more than people that went to 4 years of college and now are in debt to their. I mean, I'm kind of being vicious about this lately, Nicky, but I hope in my lifetime universities all go extinct, because I'm so annoyed. The economy can do this, but universities always have to increase tuition. I mean,
I know.
My parents went to San Diego State in the 1960s. It cost them $6 a semester. Now it would.
Oh my Lord!
Yeah, now it would cost them like $25,000. That's a public university. Think about the private university. It's ridiculous. And there's no guarantee you're going to get a job. And I look at. I have some friends that graduated Ivy League schools, and they love to brag that was the last time they opened up a book. And I'm like, well, you're an idiot. And then I got friends that are high school dropouts, and they read all the time, and they're the most interesting people. And they're learning constantly.
Yes.
I think if you're not growing, you're slowly dying.
Yes.
And, so education, my job as an educator is to really ignite that spark, is get my students so that they're constantly curious about, well, okay, I don't understand this. Maybe I should learn something about this. I mean, don't let other people do your thinking. That's what's gotten us in trouble with politics in this country, is you let the people over here tell you how to think. And I'm like, but most people are right here. Most people are sensible. And we're listening to the psychos on both sides rather than listening to our own subconscious and the intuition. Like, well, wait a sec. I don't know. I don't think
you know what drives one of the things that drives me nuts is when I have conversations with kids or young adults, their critical thinking it's like they don't have any at all. They can't solve a problem. They can't think about, okay, what tools do I have and how can I come up with a solution? And when they're chatting on their smartphones, and then they ask me direction on how to get someplace, I want to take the phone and hit him in the head with it. I'm like, right there, you got the answer in your hand. You
Yeah.
got Google Maps. I mean, what is wrong with you people?
Well, you look at it. What is it? Alligators. The moms eat their young if they are too slow. Maybe we could have that in human evolution. I don't
Well,
know.
I had hope for them before they had a phone. I mean,
Hey, Nikki, when I became a teacher, I became amazed that males have evolved at all. Because when I taught little kids, I realized very quickly all the little girls are geniuses and all the little boys are nincompoops. And I have no idea how boys turn out to evolve at all. It's actually, I saw it when I taught middle school. I saw that's where you start to see the differences. All of a sudden,
yeah.
girls don't want to sound smart in front of the boys. And then the
Mm.
boys are just talking all the time. They might not be saying anything, but this is like a politician in America. Just because you're talking doesn't mean you know anything. Yeah, it's something. I mean, I have a post-it on my desk. Maybe everybody should get this post-it. I made this post-it, and it says, "What if I'm wrong?" Because
Oh gosh.
quite often I am wrong. Maybe I should consider different points. I don't have to agree with different points. I mean, I think in this country, if people would just stop being so rude to one another, sit and listen to one another and say, well,
Yes.
I don't agree with that. That's fine. That's respectful. But you don't have to be rude
Yeah.
about it. And that's really one of the skills I
Right.
teach so many people. I mean, this is why Cyber Smarties, I love Cyber Smarties, is I've been working with this where a kid will type a message. Let's say you type a message, you're like, Danny, I think you're ugly. Well, it won't let you send the message. Instead, it sees the word ugly. It says, that's not a nice thing to say, people. Here's some different options on other ways. And they find within 3 days, kids stop writing negative things because it frustrates them, that slows them down all the time. And I'm like, wow, what a neat little idea is, you know, I worked on Capitol Hill 30 years ago, and I used to love watching debates in the Senate. And you'd watch
Yeah.
these senators, and they'd be like, I completely disagree with the honorable gentleman from Kentucky. And I always thought, oh, that's cool. They always said that. Now they're not like that. Now they're rude to one another. And I'm like, but that's
They
not.
are.
Yeah, like you shouldn't. I always like, and it's not just elected officials; it's all of us, Nikki. I mean, I
Yes.
say the same thing when I'm watching ESPN. I'm like, stop showing the highlight of the guy hot dogging in the end zone and start showing the highlight of the guy helping up the guy off the field from the other team. I love in hockey, at the end of hockey, at the end of the Stanley Cup, you see both teams form lines and they shake hands and congratulate each other. I mean, I see some sports, they don't even do that anymore. And I'm like, that's
Yeah.
sportsmanship. Like, who cares if you make the record, but you cheated? I say this
Right.
all the time to people. I'm like, well, what's the honor in that? You cheated. I mean, I mean, it cracks me up. I mean, last year was a perfect example. Is Aaron Judge? He's going for they say the home run record. He's going against Roger Maris. I'm like, huh. I didn't think Roger Maris still had the home run record. I thought it was Barry Bonds was at 73 and Mark McGwire had 70 and Sammy Sosa did it a couple of times. But people aren't acknowledging that anymore. They're like, no, but they cheated. Roger Maris. I'm like, I like that. I cheaters shouldn't get all those. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the only thing I remember about that is baseball, the one guy that got in trouble for gambling.
Yeah, Pete
And
Rose. Pete Rose.
yes, he is like the best, and they did not recognize his merits because of something he did, you know.
Yeah, it's great where people find their morals. It's like, oh, you can murder your wife, but you just can't gamble on the game. It's like it's unbelievable. And Pete Rose, you know, I'm a baseball fan, I'm a Dodger fan, but Pete Rose, I mean, you got me, Nikki. Like one of my favorite stories about Pete Rose was he was going for the all-time hits record, and he was 14 hits away from making the record. And a reporter asked him, how many more at bats do you need to get those 14 hits? And he looked at them and said, 14. I thought, wow, that's great. That's great. I love that. That's the right attitude, man. I mean, I never got to play with him, but I bet you I would have loved to have that guy on my team. The guy has heart.
Yeah.
The tools he had. He wasn't that guy. He was known as Charlie Hustle. He worked his tail off, and there's nobody I like better than a guy that's just working harder.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the kind of teammate. When I was a coach, that's the kind of player I always wanted. I always told my kids, I'm like, hey, give me the kids with heart, not with talent, because the heart will beat talent in the end, because you will start proper habits and talent. I mean, you see talent get wasted every single. I'm not going to give the negative examples, but there's so many people that have so much more talent and they waste it. And you're like, oh,
I know.
do that.
Plus, you have more fun. I mean, yeah, I may not be the best player, but we always had fun, you
Yeah.
know. Because I went to a private Christian school in high school, and we played volleyball, and we were not the best, but we always had fun,
Oh,
you
good.
know. So,
That's
but
lost. Isn't that sad? That's lost today. You get like a parent screaming at the ref. I'm like, and people don't realize there's a crisis in this country. The refs are all quitting because they're like, I'm tired of it. And it's the truth.
I know.
I mean, I see grown men screaming at a little league game. I'm like, dude, come on. Like, who cares?
It's a plastic ball.
Yeah. Calm down. Everybody needs to calm down.
They're not even keeping score.
Yeah. My cousin Bishop, he was great. His first little league game is my favorite thing ever because he got his first hit and he ran directly past the pitcher to second base. He didn't realize he was that was great.
Well, if I made a home run, I wouldn't even ran. I'd be like, I made a home run. Why do I have to run?
Yeah. Good point. I like it.
But let me, I know I had another question for you. So for people who are wanting to become interested in writing or becoming a speaker, so what advice would you give them?
Well, the people I work with typically don't want to speak at all. They're business people. And I say, well, you can either spend a lot of money on advertising or you can learn how to speak and tell your company's story. And in the end, people actually might pay you to tell your story that gets them to buy your product. So most of the people I work with aren't speakers. I do work with speakers. I work with some pretty prominent speakers. I always tell people, well, there's two ways you become a better speaker. First of all, you have to watch lots of speakers. And so I'm watching speakers every day. I watch at least 10 speakers. I'll watch televangelists. I'll watch comedians. I'll watch politicians. I'll watch them in front of big groups, in front of small groups, in front of men, in front of women, international, wherever. One tip I always give people is I watch a lot of award shows because when the person wins the Academy Award, they only have 45 seconds to give a speech. And I want to see if they can actually give a good speech. I've actually thought about creating a whole company where I just get paid by actors to write their Oscar speeches. Because most of them are lame, Nikki. Most of them are like, thank God, thank the Academy, thank my agent. You know, it's like a boring speech. But last year, not this past year, but last year there was a great. They were all boring speeches. And then the guy that I think it was for the movie Dune for editing, and he's a British guy, and he gets the Oscar. Nobody's paying attention because they're like, oh, it's a technical. I don't need to pay attention.
Yeah.
And he gets up there and he's like, a lot of people don't know this, but when phrased properly, the term Academy Award nominee can be used as an insult. Well, now everybody's laughing. They're like, he's got their attention. And then he looks and he says, for example, yesterday I got in an argument with my 17-year-old daughter, and she said, well, Academy Award nominee Joseph Horn, and everybody's dying laughing. That's the power of a good speech, Nikki, is here's a guy that
and you remembered him.
To him. I watch him get off stage. Sandra Bullock wants to meet him. Brad Pitt wants to meet him. Like, that's the power of a good speech. When I train people how to speak to build their business, I say, hey, my measure of your success is not that you got a standing ovation, although you might. My measure of success is not that everybody's coming up to you afterwards saying, wow, you're a really good speaker, although they probably will. My only measure of success is that people in your audience want to take the next step with you. They want to buy your product, or they want to sign up for your newsletter, or they want to, like if I'm working with an executive, hey, I'm going to show you how to sell this concept to your boss so that they accept your idea. That's the only measure that you should be paying attention to, is how am I affecting people? I mean, all of us as human beings basically have three motivations. We want to increase our income, we want to increase our freedom, and we want to increase our impact. And if you can accomplish those three things in any presentation, you're going to be very successful. So the first thing I always tell people is, if you want to become a good speaker, you got to watch lots of good speakers. And then the second thing I tell them is, you got to do the work. You know, Jim Rohn, one of my mentors, said you can't pay other people to do your push-ups. Once you start speaking, you got to speak everywhere. Speak to all the service clubs, Rotary Club, Lions Club, Optimist Club, Kiwanis Club. Speak to elementary schools. Speak to churches, synagogues, temples. You know, you got to do podcasts is a great way of doing. I'm a big fan of podcasts. I Nicky, I got to change my entire fee structure. I trained a guy just 2 months ago, Gustavo from Ecuador, the great American success story. He immigrates here, doesn't know a word of English. Now he runs a real estate coaching program that he offers for he offers it for $40,000. It's a 4-month program, $40,000 program. I mean, that's a pretty tough ask. I mean, wow. But I told him, I encouraged him. I said, hey, we put together his presentation. I said, you got to start practicing. And he's like, well, I'm going on a podcast. And I'm like, make the offer. You know, worst thing that happens is nobody takes it. Well, there's your baseline. Next time you get one, you know, Nicky, he calls me up the next day. He's like, Danny, you're a genius. I did it on the podcast. I'm like, oh, did you sell it? He's like, I sold 23.
23?
Nicky, I'm a reading guy. I'm not a math guy. 23 times 40,000. He made $920,000 that night on a speech we had put together. I'm not charging enough money. It's
wait a minute. So you're on commission, right?
Restructure. But, you know, that's why I've always been a teacher, man. There's nothing so exciting as seeing somebody succeed. Somebody takes,
oh my goodness, yes.
I resisted coaching for so long because I'm a perfectionist. I was the teacher that if I had 33 students and 31 of them, I got 2 grade levels above the next grade, I didn't think about those 31. I thought of the 2 that I didn't. I'm a perfectionist, and it's a flaw. It's a flaw. Like I have a very high.
That is a big flaw because your perfection is relying on other people's success.
Yeah, it is. I mean, exactly. I mean, I just expect everybody's going to put in the work, and a lot of people don't. And I'm getting better about it, Nicky. With like, I mean, I have this woman that she could be a rock star, but she doesn't do the work, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to forget you because nobody else is going to remember you because you didn't do, like, you could be so huge and she's just not doing it. And it kills me. But then I have people like Gustavo who does it that day. I'm like, it's so gratifying. I mean, that's great. There's nothing better than seeing somebody succeed. I love that. And that's why I do that.
That's one thing I realized is that, especially where in my position, people I talk to, I'm realizing that most of them just want a magic pill, you know, that it happens instantly. And I've been talking, I'm like, you have to put in the work. I had to put in the work to do what I've been doing. And it doesn't happen overnight. I mean, I was over a year in and I thought, man, what is this podcast even going to be anything, you know? And
I just look at what you
but I just kept doing it. I was like, okay, let me just do one more episode.
Good. You got your fix. Good.
Yeah, but and when I talk to people, they want that magic pill. They don't want to do the work. And I'm like, y'all got to take some action here. You got to do something. You just can't sit there. It's not going to fall on your head, you know. And
well, you're exactly right. That's why people hire me to help them grow their business through speaking. I'm their coach, but I'm like, this is why I love working with athletes. They know the value of a coach. Like one of my resolutions for this year is I needed to get in shape. And so I hired a nutritional coach, and he's been wonderful. He's trained me. I mean, I've lost 8.5% of my body weight, and it's all been fat. He's been building up my muscle. He doesn't use that as a measure. He's like, Danny, because I always tell people I'm a weight loss expert. I've lost over 1,000 pounds. The problem is I've gained over 1,230 for a net gain of 230. And he says, he's like, stop using that number. He's like, I want you to reframe this from losing weight to gaining years. And that was really good, to gain years. And then he said, he has this great quote I love. He says, now, if you want to get in shape, do cardio. if you want to have a shape, do weights. And if you want to see your shape, diet.
That's so great. I've never even thought of that.
It's great,
You
though. I
know?
mean, he's a good coach. I mean, that's what,
Yeah.
you know, Tiger Woods, one of the greatest golfers in history. I mean, he has
Yeah.
a mental coach, he has a driving coach, he has a putting coach. You know, he needs a personal
Who knew?
coach, I think. You know, but I mean, he's smart enough to hire coaches on a lot of things. I mean, maybe he'll get a coach for that.
You
So
just need one more.
one more coach. You know? That's true. I mean, all of us have that. What I love about Tiger Woods, and I never used to like him, and now I do like him because I'm like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
really, he was down in the dirt, and he's
Mm-hmm.
learned some humility, and now he
Mm-hmm.
understands that human beings struggle, and it's the
Yeah.
thing. I mean, my pastor, the guy that made me a Christian, is just one of the most incredible human beings. Um,
Mm-hmm.
well, he had an affair, and he had to leave the church, and it was
Mm-hmm.
interesting because everybody in my church condemned him, and to me, it actually strengthened my faith because I looked at
Yeah.
everyone like, but that's the whole point, folks, is he's a man. No,
I
I mean,
know.
he's flawed. Like, we need to put our
Yeah.
faith in God, not in man. Like, I listen to these
Yeah.
people talk about like whichever political candidate that they're. I'm like, really? You know, that person's going
Yeah.
to change things. Is it going to change? I mean, like, put your faith up there, not in whoever's there.
Exactly. That's such a
Freaking
good
cause.
point. I'm glad you made that because when you were talking about Tiger Woods, I thought of Robert Downey Jr.
Well, yeah, another good.
And I remember it was one of the times he had gotten arrested and they had his picture in the paper, like in the USA Today,
Mhm.
and he looked horrible. I mean, obviously he was, not doing right. And I was like, God, please use him
Mm.
and take care of him, because I mean, I didn't know it. I only seen a few of his pictures, but I just hated seeing someone like that had been up, in the highlight or whatever. And now, I mean, he's obviously, is doing way better,
Yeah,
but I just love it when you see someone come from, down in the dirt and they just come up and they're like, okay,
yeah,
yeah, I did that stuff, you know, but I'm human. I made mistakes
that's right.
because all of us do that. And I think that's what makes us, you know, so unique as a human being is being able to, even though all the odds are against us, we can make up our mind and decide, yes, I'm going to defeat this. I'm going to do better. I'm going to be a better person.
Yeah,
I can do this. I
yeah.
talk to myself all the time. Nikki, you are smarter than this electronic. you know.
It might be God talking through you too. I mean, that's what I always say. Where I go on stage, I'm like, God, use me as an instrument. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
like there's times when I realize I say something brilliant on stage and people are like, wow, that was brilliant. I'm like, well, I didn't say it. There's no way. I'm not
It wasn't in my speech.
there's no way I said that. That's way
I
too
know.
fun to come out of my mouth. So
Ex
but I love that
exactly.
point that you made. I absolutely, those are my stories that I love the most, are the people
Mhm.
that they fall down. I mean, that's why Rocky's like the greatest movie ever. I mean, Rocky,
Yes.
the night before he has to fight Apollo Creed, he's in bed with Adrian. He's like, Adrian, I'm going to lose tomorrow. He's like, but I don't care. I just want to go the distance. That's all I want. And I mean, and it's such a brilliant screenplay because
Yeah.
people forget he loses at the end of Rocky, but he went the distance. And so based
Yeah.
on these criteria, he's the champion. I mean, I'm like,
Yeah.
that's why you love Rockies. He gets punched down, he gets right back up. I mean, the people that, I mean, you look at like the history of Abraham Lincoln. Like, the guy's life was one failure after another.
It was.
It's crazy, and
Yeah.
uh, that's what always gets me excited, Nikki. Is there's people out there like that
Yeah.
where did this? When I read Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela, which I recommend to everybody,
Mhm.
Mandela became the prime minister of South Africa, the president of South Africa. Like,
Mhm.
they're freaking out. They're like, "Uh oh, we put this guy in jail for 27 years. He was in prison for 27 years, exercising a right that all Americans have, which is to criticize your government. He was put in prison for 27 years for that. So he gets out, and when he becomes president, all the whites are like, uh-oh, here comes the comeuppance. We're all doomed. And so what does Mandela do? He creates the Truth and Reconciliation Council. This is government policy. So whites that had killed blacks, if they went in front of this council, they had to go before the family of whoever they killed and admit that they did it and apologize. As long as they did that, they were wiped clean. This was the government policy. And people were freaking out. And all of this, that's what made South Africa come together.
Yeah.
Where does a person, you look at Gandhi. Gandhi was able to bring down the British Empire without firing a shot. That's a pretty powerful person. I mean, you look at Abraham Lincoln has one of my favorite political quotes of all time. He said, "I know the best way to defeat my enemies. I shall make them my friends." Holy cow.
It's true.
That's why I tell people you need to read. That's why I read these stories to kids. I want them to hear, actually the last book I wrote was Leadership Begins with Motivation, which was a book I wrote because when I was a middle school teacher, I was the only teacher never to have any students tardy because I always started off class reading a Paul Harvey story. I grew up listening to Paul Harvey on the radio. He died at the age of 325 years old. And Paul
in
Harvey,
radio years.
He'd come on every day, 12:15 on the radio. He's like, "I'm Paul Harvey," with the rest of the story. And you're trying to figure out who he's talking about the whole time. And I love those stories, but Nicky, a lot of his stories are about like Sears and Roebuck, which kids today don't even know what Sears Roebuck is. And so I wrote a book which was more updated stuff like about Nike and Amazon and stuff like that. And after I wrote the book, completely unintentionally, I read the book and I'm like, wait a second. So many of my examples are of white male Americans. It was odd. And so the book I'm writing right now, almost all the stories are about women, minorities, and international examples because kids from all over have to see hope. Like,
that's a great idea.
When I speak in India, people think I'm a great speaker, and I was speaking to an all-girls school, and these two girls come up to me after the speech. One wants to be a lawyer, the other one wants to be a doctor. I'm like, well, that's great. Are you going to go to university here in India, or maybe you'll go to Great Britain or the United States? And they look at me like, oh, we're girls. We can't leave India. I'm like, get back in that auditorium. Got them all back in there. And I said, now is your moment, ladies. I mean, within 5 years, you're going to become the largest country on the planet in terms of population. You're a very young democracy. You're only about 75 years old. Yet you've already elected a woman prime minister. America still has not elected a woman president. I'm like, right now, there are twice as many women in India as there are people in the United States. There are actually more women in India with a graduate degree than there are people in the United States. And I told them, like, hey, you just made my life's mission, the next CEO, the next president, the next really good mom. And that's all fine and good, Nicky, but think about this. How much more powerful would that presentation have been if you had given it? Now they see a woman gave it. Oh, let's go one step further. What if an Indian woman gave that presentation? So, and again, I don't, hey, you can be inspired by anybody. I mean, I'm a white dude. Lin-Manuel Miranda inspires me. Jordan inspires me. I mean, you don't have to be the same race, the same ethnic, whatever. But I do believe that when you see people that look like you or have a similar background, it's inspiring to see, wow, maybe I could do something like that.
Well, and that's the whole reason why I started my podcast, is to talk to other moms that have suffered, with depression and trying to raise their kids. One of the things I did not realize would have been a great thing to do was to talk to my kids about my depression growing up. I never spoke to them about it. If I was sick, I would take them to their dad, or if I had several surgeries, they didn't even know it because I would make arrangements for them to stay with their dad. And my whole point was I did not want them to worry about it. But now that they're older and we talk about it, they're offended that I didn't trust them with the news. That's how they took it, was they felt like I didn't trust them,
Well, then
and
you should add that tagline for your audience. It's not just, you should say it's going to be okay. And you should also say you're not alone.
yeah, exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
have you ever read the book, The World According to Garp by John Irving?
Yeah.
Oh, it's such a beautiful book. It's actually it was the first book to get me to laugh out loud. Garp is walking with his mother on Times Square, and they pass a prostitute, and his mother's like, "Is that the latest fashion?" And he's like, "No, that's the oldest profession." I just thought that was such a but the reason
I watched the movie too, and that's when I first met Rob Lithgow. I thought, oh my God, he's amazing.
Well, and what I love though, and you'll see it's in the movie too, is right before his mother dies, he's calling to her as she gets on the helicopter, and he's like, "I never needed a father," and it's such it's nice.
Yeah,
It's like, I mean, I really believe that there's a space reserved in heaven for single moms. I have no idea how they do it, but they do. I talk to so many women. They're having the surgery. They have the kid, and then that night they're making dinner for the husband, then plowing the field. It's unbelievable. Like what the threshold. Like I always preferred coaching girls than coaching boys, and I always tell people, girls are much more competitive than boys. They're much more vicious. They will go for it, and but I also loved coaching girls because they were more coachable. They would actually. They would let down their egos, and they would listen, and they focus on fundamental. I watch women's tennis all the time, and it's so much more enjoyable than men's tennis. Men's tennis is like 190 mile an hour serve, 190 mile an hour serve. But you watch the women, and there's rallies going on, and and it's fundamentals. I just love watching them. And it's times are changing. I tell people, I'm not a math guy, but look at the numbers. Like 63% of college students right now are female. I always tell the guys, you better get used to it. Within 20 years, you're going to be working for a woman. I promise you that.
Yeah.
Things are changing, which is long overdue.
Yeah. Yeah. And, not that we need to take over the world, because I think everybody has their own place. And just because I was a single mom and how hard it was, I do realize, especially raising boys, there was things that my boys needed that needed to come from a man that I did not even know anything about. And so when I finally met my second husband, my kids were teenagers, and he didn't know what to do with them. I was like, you just be yourself. You just be yourself, and they'll get what they need from that. And that's exactly what he did. And so whenever, something would come up, they would go talk to him about it, and he would just have a conversation with them. And that's exactly what they needed. They just needed a male figure in the house doing the things that he does and just emulating, what he would do. And I just loved it, because it really took a lot of pressure off of me. And I just hope that, they are able to do that for their kids whenever that happens. So
right. Great. It's great that you were able to find them a positive male role model.
Yeah. And I told him, and before that, I said, you need to get into an extracurricular activity. I don't care what it is. So one picked a church and one picked a sport, and the older one, I can't remember what he did. He he just wanted to get in trouble. But anyway, he has some other things going on. But I think just keeping them busy, with some positive influences. And then when my husband came along, then that was added into it. So it was a blessing for sure.
Nice.
It's not easy being a single parent. I would not wish that on anybody. But so anyway, last thought. So what is your favorite thing besides teaching kids to, wanting to give them that passion for reading? Give me one more thing that you really, really enjoy.
Well, so again,
being an educator.
I think what makes me different than a lot of speaking coaches is I recently judged a speaking competition, Nicky, and 1,300 people gave depressing talks. And
a competition.
Hey, I believe, life is short. I take my job seriously. I don't take myself seriously because I ain't all that, and neither are you. And if you think you're all that, teach kindergarten for 1 week. Those little ones will say. I mean, I once had a little girl, LaShonda. She raises her hand. I'm like, LaShonda, question. She's like, Miss Brassell, when are you going to trim your nose hair? I'm like, this afternoon. Thanks for bringing that to me. I ain't all that.
No, you probably thought I should have listened to my wife.
Well, I tell people, and I'm not saying that the depressing story is not an effective sales tactic. I mean, I'm sure it is, but to me, to me, there's a couple of reasons I train people a different way. First of all, I think the world needs hope. I think people need, everybody's had something depressing happen to them. We just survived a global pandemic. I mean, it's a tough world out there. I think we need people smiling again. And this is the one that gets me in trouble, that people, they get angry when I say this, but I say, there's something that becomes inauthentic to me about a person telling a sad story repeatedly. I mean, you really want to create a sad story that you tell 1,000 times. I mean, I have a friend, and he talks about the murder of his daughter. He's given that talk over 1,000 times. And you got to be a much stronger person than me. I could never do that talk. Plus, here's where I get in trouble. I tell people this. I'm like, I can tell the same funny stories again and again, and it's pure joy and laughing and whatever. I think if you tell the same sad story again and again, those become crocodile tears after a while. There's something very authentic about it. I mean, there's a real purpose in getting people to laugh, to getting people to smile. And I mean, there's plenty of people in my audience that won't necessarily do business with me. That doesn't matter to me. What matters is that I still serve them in some way, that I'm able to bring them joy. So if you ask me what turns me on, I have a game I play every day where I look for the most miserable person I can find, which is really easy because I'm in a lot of airports and there's plenty of miserable people. And my game is, what can I do to get them to laugh? And it's the truth. I just, I tell people, life is way too short. And
it is.
We're on this rock for maybe 80, 90 years if we're lucky. Hopefully we made the world a little bit better place than when we entered it. And again, I'm not going to completely put down the sob stories. I mean, but I used to do speaking competitions, and I'd always think I won. I'm like, oh, because I get everybody pumped up and laughing. And then the speaker after me is like, the first time Daddy touched me, I'm like, I lost. And it always irritated me. And but to each his own. To each his own. And maybe that's the point I got to make, is to each his own. Like, one of the best pieces of advice I got when I started speaking was, I'm a person, I look at my evaluations and I forget the 500 positive ones. I look at the one negative one. My mentor, who passed away this past summer, Jim Trelease, great guy, he looks at me and he's like, Danny, what you don't understand is 5% of your audience, they don't like you. And they didn't like you before they even met you. There's a lot of miserable people out there that just want to find out what's wrong. I mean, you want to see miserable people, go to Yelp. People like to gripe about everything, So what turns me on is being around people that don't take themselves too seriously. That are here to enjoy life a little bit, that can take those negative experiences and see the humor in them, the positivity, get the lesson that way. So if there's one thing I would love to bestow to your audience, it's going to be okay.
Yes, it is. Because I take every tragedy I have and turn it into a hilarious story.
Good.
And that my coworkers would just wait for me to get to work because they knew something has probably happened to me.
Great. I love it.
Oh, well, thank you, Danny. I hope that we can get together again in the future. And how can we get a hold of you if we want to reach out?
I want to give everybody a couple of gifts for listening to me. So if you go to freegiftfromdanny.com, again, freegiftfromdanny.com, I'm going to give everybody a complimentary e-copy of my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed. This is a book I wrote for a school principal who was trying to keep his faculty and staff positively engaged. They said, okay, I'll write your book. So every week.
Did it come with a bottle of alcohol?
Yeah. Besides that, absolutely right. So every week I give you a concept, an inspirational quote, an inspirational story, a book recommendation on a book you should read, but you're probably too lazy because you're an adult. So I also give you a children's book recommendation. Demonstrates the same concept. You can read that in 5 minutes. And then I'm also going to give everybody access to, last summer, I did a 5-day reading challenge online for about 700 parents worldwide, where every day for an hour, I give you a whole bunch of ideas on how to get your kids pumped up about reading at home. Again,
wow.
Yeah, I mean, the way we get kids to read, you got to get kids excited about reading. And the way you get kids, I give you all kinds of ideas on how to get kids excited about reading. So that's a free gift from Danny.com. And then I really hope we get to do this again, Nikki, because I just think you're pure joy.
Maybe next time your wife can join us.
Oh, it's a selfish reason. Oh, my wife. So, you're going to see who wears the pants in my family. It ain't me. I'm wearing a dress right now. It's pathetic because my wife is the handy one. She goes to Home Depot with me, and the Home Depot worker always talks to me. And she's like, "Why are you talking to him? Talk to me." She's the one that does it.
I asked the question.
Yes, and it's great because we go to parent-teacher conferences, and the teacher always talks to my wife. I'm like, "Stop talking to her. I'm the one that knows everything about the education." So
don't you know I'm an educator?
She's great. She cracks me up, and she makes sure I'm humbled all the time. I didn't realize how little I knew until I got married.
That always happens. I do that to my husband. Yeah. He says I'm the meanest person he knows.
Well, we used to have an agreement where I was always right and she always got her way. But then when the kids came along, the agreement became she's always right and she always gets her way. It worked for us.
I already knew how that was going to go.
Absolutely.
I tell people, I said, I let my husband think he's always right, but we all know the truth.
I have this nasty habit. My pastor, every week I send him lines to use for the and so he used one the other day. I was all excited because he did a service on what the Bible says about man, and then the next week he was talking about women. And so I gave him a line. I said, "Oh, give this line." I guarantee, because he had offended some women parishioners the week before. I'm like, "Oh no, you can win them back. I know how you can win them back." So the line you give them is that God created man, and then thought, "You know what? I can do better than that." And then he created woman. You got a good laugh.
Yeah, but we'll get you in trouble. Yeah. Well, thank you, Danny. I do appreciate that. And I cannot wait to have another conversation with you. It's just been a joy.
Thanks for all you do, Nikki. Keep doing it.
Thank you.